many here do residential plumbing only?
Yeah.
How many here do commercial plumbing? So most of you are commercial. And some residential, correct? So in your travels to different plants, factories, businesses, how many of you are familiar with deionized water, DI water? Do you know what is DI water? DI is short for deionized. And remember we were talking earlier about the cations and the anions? Yes. DI water, DI resin takes out all the cations and all the anions. Theoretically, you have pure water, okay? Where they use DI water, well, they use them in plating companies, they use them in food service sometimes, they use it in water for infusion, they use them in laboratory water. There's unlimited manufacturing opportunities for DI water. Typically Culligan, Evoqua, companies like that have tanks that are even bigger than this that are full of DI resin that weigh several hundred pounds, and they'll cart them into a facility and hook them up, run water through them, and when the water comes out, it's deionized, okay? The scale on deionized water is measured in microsiemens or megohms. The higher the number, the more pure the water, the less conductivity there is. In theory, 18.2 megohms is the purest water you can get. Okay? There's a lot of laboratory processes that may require 1 to 2 megohms. Okay? 1 to 2 megohms is pretty easy to get. 18.2 requires a little bit different type of equipment. We do all that though. And just as a little primer, if any of your companies here do commercial and are interested in representing us, we are looking for people to do that, so you might contact us if you are interested in that. Because occasionally we have installations, because typically a DI system will include maybe a water softener or an anti-scaling system. It'll include a backwashing carbon filter. It'll include a reverse osmosis system, ultraviolet light, and maybe some very fine filtration. The reason it includes reverse osmosis is if you rely on DI to be your primary demineralization method, the cost becomes about 50 cents a gallon. It's very, very high. So if you use reverse osmosis, remember I said reverse osmosis takes out 98 to 99%, but the best reverse osmosis might not even be 200 ohms, not megohms, 200 ohms. So it's not nearly deionized enough. But if you use reverse osmosis as your primary demineralization method, the cost of producing DI water goes down to 3 to 4 cents a gallon. So when I talk to people and they say, I say, well, I need a DI system, okay. How many gallons a day are you going to use? I'm going to use 200 gallons a day, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a reverse osmosis system to feed it. No, I don't need a DI. I don't need a reverse osmosis. I just need DI. Well, they have no idea what they're talking about, because if you're using 200 gallons a day times 50 cents a gallon, it's $100 a day to produce 200 gallons of DI water. Whereas if you buy a reverse osmosis system, which might, if you're doing 200 gallons a day, a reverse osmosis system might cost $600 or $700. You're going to take that 200 gallons a day times 4 cents, it's going to be $8. It's not going to take very long to pay for that RO system. So it's an education process. People say, well, I don't want RO. Well, guess what? you don't like money very much because it's going to fly out the windows right there. But if you use DI, it's going to last a lot longer and it's going to be a lot more cost effective. So typically when we're putting DI systems in, you're either using stainless steel or Schedule 80 CPVC because it's ultra pure water. You can't run it through copper or cast iron or galvanized or anything like that. It's got to be ultra pure water. It's got to be able to withstand it. Typically 316 stainless if you're going to use stainless. Problem is, in a lot of places we can't use stainless because we have instrumentation that's in the stream, and the stainless steel affects the instrument reading. So at least maybe 6 or 8 inches on either side of the instrument, because we may be monitoring conductivity, pH, oxidation reduction potential. There's any number of things, and we need to have no interference with any metal fittings. So ultra pure water is a whole different animal. In a lot of cases, you're going to put it like in a laboratory. You're going to put an ultra pure water system in. Maybe we have systems that maybe 8,000 gallons a day, and they circulate it throughout the plant. And you can't have any dead loops. You've got to have full circulation. And then if you're pulling off a line, you may have to have circulation on that line too. So it's a real art doing DI water. But there's a big market there. If you see banks of tanks, of DI tanks in a factory, you can bet there's probably a lot cheaper way of doing that, and you can save people a lot of money. So that's just something to keep your eyes open for, because DI water is very, very important in manufacturing, laboratory, and a lot of other things. As we mentioned earlier, maybe we just touched on this, but U.S. Water Systems, we are the largest provider of water treatment for craft beer brewing across the country. We do more breweries than anybody in the world, and a lot of distilled spirits too. And the big emerging market is water for cannabis and hemp. They grow faster with clean water. If you have the bacteria out of it, the minerals out of it, and then you remineralize or fertilize with precisely the amount that you need, you'll get an extra crop a year, or it'll grow 30% faster. These are all important things as this industry grows. So, beer, distilled spirits, hemp and cannabis, and all kinds of water jet cutting. There's all kinds of applications, laboratory water, all kinds of applications where water is very critical to the processes. And obviously food service is another big area too. So we do all those things, and now I just want to open it up for some questions. If you've got any specific questions, I'd be glad to answer for a few minutes.
Can you drink deionized water?
It doesn't taste very good. It's very, very ultra pure. It's got a bitter taste, to my opinion, and there's no need to. But it's very critical in processes. Yes?
Got to go back a little farther, but about the pH levels, like what's the difference between 1 and 14? I know like what really bad for you, but like what is the difference between those?
Okay. Well, 1 is acidic, and 2 is alkaline, or 14 is alkaline. So if you got a 1 pH, which I've never seen other than artificially, by artificial means, you've got a big problem. If you've got a pH of 6, you've typically got problems with copper plumbing. You're going to see blue-green stains on fixtures. And, one of the things I've seen over the years, probably a dozen times, and I've been doing this 45 years, and probably a dozen times I've seen blue-green stains that we could not figure out what they were coming from. The pH was fine. They had a circulation on the hot water loop. We checked to see if there was dielectric unions there. There was no improper connections. Had dielectric unions on the pumps. They had dielectric unions on the water heater. We've run multiple grounding rods, took like 4 or 5 copper grounding rods, pounded them into the ground, strapped them together, still had blue-green stains, and maybe a half dozen times over 45 years. We've never figured out what the problem was. But you can fix that problem through polyphosphate injection. You inject polyphosphate into the water. It's a food-grade material. It's FDA approved, and it coats the pipe with a 1-molecule thick coating of polyphosphate. And the unique thing about polyphosphate is, unlike scale, it won't stick to itself. It's a fragile coating, so it gets knocked off rather easily. So that's why it's important to continually inject it. But it's kind of like, I liken it to kind of taking like an antacid. If you've got acid indigestion or whatever, if you take a Rolaids, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but it masks it over, and that's what the polyphosphate does. It doesn't solve the problem. We've speculated that sometimes it's just stray current. I mean, you've got your sound system, maybe your electrical system, and you've got your burglar system and all this stuff, you know, grounded to your plumbing system, and maybe it's just some stray current, but there's been a few cases we just couldn't figure it out, and the only thing we could do was apply polyphosphate, and it solved the problem. So polyphosphate's a wonderful thing when used properly. A lot of chicken houses use it when they're in countries, out in the country where they have wells, they have iron. They've got these little waterers that the chicken puts its beak on there and water comes out. And the chickens figure out how to use that. But if you got a lot of iron in the water, it'll plug it up. And so they use that rather than soften it or do a lot of other filtration, they often feed polyphosphate, and it keeps things from sticking.
How do you inject that into the water? How do you keep it?
Well, what you do is you have a chemical feed pump. We have meters that run from 3/4 inch to 2 inch, depending on what size you need. And then there's a proportional control that activates a pump. And you just simply test the polyphosphate levels after a couple of hours, test the level, you get it dialed in, and it proportionally injects it from there on. Once you get it dialed in, it's easy. Just like chlorine, I mean, you just dial in whatever residual you want, and it's easy. With peroxide, when you're injecting peroxide, it's a whole different animal. You can test for peroxide, but the easiest way is to let it run for a while, draw a glass. And if you see a lot of air bubbles, I mean a ton of air bubbles, it's too many, dial it back a little bit. Not very scientific, but it works. Just a couple of other things that I'll share with you. We run into some really strange things sometimes. I've had a well driller drill a well and hit a vein of red ants. You know how to take ants out of the water, right? An ant filter, obviously. You're supposed to laugh. I've also seen methane. You ever see anybody seen methane in water? I was at a church once, a little country church, and they had water problems, and I looked at their system and I said, "You got methane in your water?" "No, we don't have methane." "Yeah, you got methane." I said, "Go get a milk jug." So they went and got a milk jug, and I went and drew a gallon of water and filled it about that far from the top, capped it, and all these elders and deacons are sitting in the conference room with the pastor, and I go in there and set it on the conference table, and I uncapped it, took a cigarette lighter and lighted it, and shot a flame up about that high. And that was when I told them the joke, how you make holy water. You know how I make holy water? You boil the hell out of it. It took about 30 seconds, and then the pastor started laughing, and everybody else could laugh too. The methane? Yeah, from underground rock structures. I mean, we get methane out. I mean, we get oil, we get natural gas, and the methane. It's decaying. Something's decaying. And how do you take methane out? Aeration. You take a big tank about this big around. You have a loop at the top. Water comes in, sprays out. You have a vent fan that vents it to the atmosphere, and it's fine. Takes it all out. Repressurize it with a pump and pressure tank, and we typically put a submersible pump inside that tank, and then you have incredible pressure coming out. Either that, or you can just live with the methane, just don't smoke when you're in the shower.
Now, that system for removing methane, is that a more cost-effective solution rather than just finding a new spot to drill a well?
Well, you don't know. I mean, one of three outcomes happen when you drill a well. You either get better water, you get worse water, or you get the same water. And two of those three aren't necessarily good. So you roll the dice. You could get one, but typically we find areas where there's methane and there's like a 2-mile wide strip by 8 miles long that if you drill a well there, you're probably going to get methane. Same thing with hydrogen sulfide. There's a lot of hydrogen sulfide up around some of the lake, certain areas of the lake here. I don't remember where they're at, but there are certain areas they have a lot of hydrogen sulfide. We put a lot of systems up here over the years.
It's possible that your well and the next door neighbor might have completely different water or very different water or somewhat different water, but Mark's right, you can get whole swaths.
Feels in the vein of it.
Yep, that's the way it is.
I was gonna say I received from the city because I stay in Chicago, so I received this filter kit that they sent, and then they sent me also with it a meter to test the water. I was gonna say how accurate do you think those are?
I presume it's a TDS meter. I don't know.
Okay.
They're fairly accurate. There's do-it-yourself kits though, and you gotta understand the do-it-yourself kits are kind of like vicinity. It's in the vicinity, you know. I mean, it's close. I mean, yeah, you know, it's maybe 20% close, but you know, it's not good enough if you really want to size a system. You know, it's kind of like hanging a sock up in the backyard. When it's wet, it's raining, and when it's frozen, it's cold. And, you know, I mean, it kind of tells you what it is, but it's not exact. But that's interesting. They gave you a filter kit.
Yeah, they sent me like a little postcard, and then you have to go online to register. And they sent it.
I think they did that because they were replacing the water meters, and then people started getting lead, finding lead in the water.
See, I think what's going to happen in the future, I think you're going to see more and more municipalities getting in the water treatment area because they're going to have to, because they can't treat all the water as if it's going to be internally consumed. So if they can't, then they're going to have to supply something for you to do that, you know? And I can see that happening.
I was on a job where you were installing those in the pantries, in offices. A lot of people don't see that water.
Yeah. You know, for instance, water coolers. That's a big market. We sell a reverse osmosis system and a bottle-free cooler. It's just got it's a cooler that doesn't have a bottle on it. And you run an RO cable, you know, I mean, about the size of a cable TV line. You run it around the baseboard or wherever. We're just getting ready to do Andretti Racing in Indianapolis. They've got 5 water coolers, and they want to hydrate their employees better, and so we're making alkaline water. We start out with RO water, then we turn it into alkaline water, and it runs to all the coolers. So it's getting to be a big health-conscious market. I mean, people are realizing that if athletes can hydrate better, they won't pull muscles as quickly, they won't pull those hamstrings, and they can have better performance, less injury, recover quicker from injury. Water's all a big part of it. And the better the water, the better you're going to do it. Any other questions?
What's your intake on distilled water versus deionized water?
Well, deionized water and distilled water are pretty close. The problem is if you're just distilling water, certain chemicals can distill into this, because when you're distilling water, you're boiling it and then turning it into steam and then catching that steam, okay? Some chemicals, some volatile organic chemicals can distill in that water stream. So you can have distilled water that can be very deadly. You typically, if you're going to have distilled water, you still have to do some carbon filtration to take out some of those chemicals. Whereas DI is pretty well going to do everything. And distilled water is more expensive because you have to make it. You have to use electricity to make it, and it costs quite a bit to make distilled water. The other thing is cleaning the distillers too, because the scale builds up in the distillers, and you've got to clean them quite frequently. So they still sell distillers. We don't sell distillers at all because I just don't believe in them because of the trouble with cleaning and in fact they're expensive to operate. But used properly, they're fine. You just got to couple it with carbon filtration. That's why, I mean, technically, a reverse osmosis system is not just reverse osmosis. We've got sediment filtration here. We've got 2 carbon blocks, and we can vary these carbon blocks. For instance, if you have a lot of lead, we have lead carbon blocks. We have chlorine carbon blocks. We have arsenic-specific blocks. We have nitrate-specific blocks. And then you've got the reverse osmosis membrane here, and then you've got the final coconut shell granular active carbon filter here. So when we say this is a reverse osmosis system, it's really a lot more than just reverse osmosis. It's other processes here. And one of the, I guess the thing that I want to end on is we have some really, really good plumbers that do excellent installation jobs. Pass this around. I'll let some of you see this if you want to see it real quick. This is this something we can put on? Can I email this, text it or email it to you?
You can do the document camera if you just want to probably do it quicker.
It's covered. This is it right. Put it in here. So this is a whole house reverse osmosis. This happens to be a 12,000 gallon a day system. But right here's 2.
Oh, you hit the windows there.
The screen went off.
It's dead.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Clayton's on there.
There we go. So these are 16 to 60.
Hey, quiet down.
These are 16 to 65 tanks with catalytic carbon. This is a hydrogen peroxide injection system that's going to inject carbon into the hydrogen peroxide into here. And then this is the 12,000 gallon a day RO system. There's an anti-scalant system over here. This is a repressurization pump that will pump 50 gallons a minute. And that's their bladder tank. And this is the storage tank for the RO system. So that they want to RO through the whole house. And it's a big mansion.
Regular plumbers need that?
Yeah. So my point is, regular plumbers do a great job with this. But the biggest problem we have with plumbers, and I'm going to tell you, is they think they know all the answers. And all it takes, and they don't want to look like they're dumb, but you know, the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. We have a full tech support department, and when you call, our guys step you through it. And you know, you can either read the manual or you can call for 5 minutes and we'll point you the right direction. Saves a lot of trouble, it really does. And that's why we're there 8 to 8, Monday through Friday with tech support. So that's a state-of-the-art system right there. Those are, honestly, we sell probably that size, probably sell 5 or 6 a week. That's a big one, but it's.
It's a big one, 5 to 6.
Yeah, most of the whole house we do might be 2,000 to 4,000 gallons a day. That's 12,000 gallons a day.
Holy moly.
And again, though, it's not how many gallons a day you make, it's how fast you fill this tank. If at 12,000 gallons a day, that's about 8 gallons a minute. It's going to fill that tank.
And for replacing, like, what would you have to replace and how frequent would you have to replace?
Peroxide has to be added. This is well water. Peroxide has to be added maybe every 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
There's a filter like that gray filter over there back here that maybe once a year.
Okay.
And then there's another, if you can slide over, there's another picture. Yeah. This is the UV. These are the ultraviolet system, the ballast. And there's a bulb in there that has to be replaced. These are 2 20-gallon UVs, so it's full of 40 gallons, and they're full head together. And those bulbs have to be replaced once a year. They're about $100 a piece. So that's really all there is to it. Slide it over, and you can see the house.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello?
you got a call.
From the guy in the song.
He's like, it's leaks everywhere. Pure water like this over inside of his joint.
So honestly, we see a lot of that.
That's not an boy one.
Yeah,
That looks like the nectar. Is that what that is?
it's a Matterhorn.
It's a house like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, we do a lot of houses like that. Lifestyles of the rich and the famous, and they need plumbers. So, anybody else have any questions? I'm not going to persecute you and make you listen to them anymore. I've appreciated talking to you. This is, like I said, this is a pilot one we're going to do. Hopefully in the future we're going to have handouts and we're going to have a 3-ring binder and all that good stuff. It's just a process that we're going through. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you tolerating us and putting up with us. And anything else you need, let us know.
All right, thank you.